Hi everyone, and welcome to the National History Day in Iowa Exhibit Category webinar. My name is Vania Boland, and I'm the State Coordinator for the National History Day in Iowa program. And today we are going to be talking about the exhibit category with former National History Day in Iowa student, Andrew. Andrew, can you introduce yourself and share your experience with National History Day in the exhibit category?
Yes, hello. So my name is Andrew. I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Iowa, and I did History Day for 7 years, sixth grade all the way up until my senior year of high school. And I did the exhibit category for all of the years that I was competing in junior division, so sixth grade through eighth grade, and I was lucky enough to go to nationals my seventh grade year with an exhibit on Dr. Seuss. So I have a lot of experience doing exhibits, and then from freshman to senior year of high school, I did website, which is basically an exhibit but online. And so I have a good deal of experience working with how to present things effectively and just love History Day. So I'm excited to talk about how to do exhibits.
Awesome, thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. The exhibit category. An exhibit is a visual representation of your research and interpretation of your topic's significance in history. The analysis and interpretation of your topic must be clear and evident to the viewer. Labels and captions should be used creatively with visual images and objects to enhance the message of your exhibit. The exhibit category is three-dimensional and is displayed on a physical structure, usually on an 8-foot table at the contest or a round table at the contest. Exhibits use colors, images, documents, objects, graphics, and design, as well as words to tell your topic's story. Exhibits can be interactive experiences by asking viewers to play music, look at a video, or open a door or window to see more documents and photos. All right, so before you get started building an exhibit, we want you to ask yourself a couple questions. Is an exhibit the best way to showcase my research and my topic? Do I have the materials or assistance to create the exhibit? How should I organize my research to provide structure to my exhibit? So Andrew, can you kind of share with students what are some best ways to prepare your research and building an exhibit, or maybe some things they should think about before designing and building?
Yeah, so I think that it's important whenever you start out in doing a History Day project that you first sort of figure out what your topic is. And the topic really should dictate what category you specifically do. So topics that really lend themselves to exhibits are topics that have a lot of primary sources that you can show images, complex events that might be better explained through some type of timeline or visual representation. And so the big thing is you think about really effective exhibits are ones that feel like a museum exhibit, where what are the topics that you're doing that are best suited for some type of experience where the person themselves gets to dictate how they go through the process of learning the information. So with that first question, is an exhibit the best way to showcase my research? Your research, ideally, if it's going to be in an exhibit category, should have a lot of images. It should have a lot of primary documents that maybe you could put out in the exhibit, or photos that you could use. And that way it sort of makes it a lot easier to represent the topic. And do you have the materials or the assistance to create an exhibit? Of course, it does come down to resources that you have available to you. Exhibits do have some cost associated with actually building them. They don't have to be super expensive because you can do simple trifold boards that you can get at Office Depot, do very well at both the district, state, and national level. So it doesn't have to be super expensive, but it is an important question regarding what you have at your fingertips to physically build, since you do have to do some physical building of a project. And the organization really comes down to how do you take this complex topic and best digest it for the judge or for the person that's looking at the exhibit. And so it's important when working on exhibits that you have a lot of both resources to build it, but also research resources that can really bring the topic alive, which is really the beauty of doing the exhibit category.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we're going to dive into some of the contest rules with exhibits. So the overall size of your exhibit must be no larger than 40 inches wide, 30 inches deep, and 6 feet high. So the measurement of the exhibit does not include the table on which it rests. However, it does include any stand that you create, any table drapes, For example, if you look at the photo on the screen on the left, this exhibit had a black tablecloth underneath it, and it draped down about a couple inches. So we had to add that measurement of the cloth to the height of the exhibit. So make sure if you're using any fabric that it's within that 6-foot height range. Circular or rotating exhibits, like the example on the right, those are meant to be viewed from all sides and must be no more than 30 inches in diameter. Andrew, do you have any advice or maybe some examples at contests of exhibits or any, size concerns, or maybe some examples you can share with kids on how to prepare for the measurements or how to make sure that they're staying within the rules?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple things. First, I don't think people a lot of the time use the full amount of space that they have available to them. So make sure that both of these exhibits that you have up here, I had the opportunity to work with, and what really helped is that they used the full amount of space that was available to them, which meant that they had as many opportunities as possible to put the resources and share their analysis regarding the topic. I also think that when it comes to being careful about the requirements, I think it's easy to forget about the tablecloth coming down, or that you have to go from the very top of the exhibit all the way to the bottom, and same with the 30 inches in diameter, and that you need to test those things, in part because that's the space that you're given at the district, state, and national contests to place your exhibit. So when you don't abide by those rules, it really puts your own project in jeopardy of being effectively displayed. And so making sure that you're measuring those things ahead of time, and as you're constructing it, every step of the way as you're building the exhibit, you're measuring things to make sure that they're all within the right limit, because you don't want to get to the contest and then realize when you get, docked for it on your judging sheet that you weren't within the requirements. So these things are also well published, that it's also pretty easy to do it every step of the way.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the word limit. So there is a 500 word limit applied to all student composed text that appears on or as a part of the exhibit entry. So this includes text that you write for titles, subtitles, captions, graphs, timelines, media devices, or supplemental materials, such as photo albums, scrapbooks, etc. So this is where you're developing and writing your own words. So brief factual credits of the sources of illustrations or quotations included on the exhibit do not count towards the 500 word limit. So if you're putting any quotes from your topic or you're citing photos, those do not count towards that 500 student composed word limit. So Andrew, do you have any suggestions on how to stay within the word limit, or maybe did you have people review your exhibit before it went to contest? Can you just share some advice on that?
Yeah, one of the toughest things about the exhibit category is the 500 word limit, because once you really get into a topic and you do so much research on these issues in history, and you get so invested that it is really, really tough to boil it down to just 500 words. And so I think some pieces of advice that I have for students would be stay within the word limit, and the best thing that you can do is supplement your student composed words with, like it has here, captions, with supplemental materials, if that's quotations, if that's other photos, if that's clips from documentaries. Those things can really open up the analysis. And what you should do is reserve your 500 words of student composed words explicitly for analysis. So information that, retelling of events, I would try and reserve that for quotations or for supplemental materials, because those things don't necessarily, you don't need to be saying that with your own words. Try and reserve your 500 word limit for specifically your analysis of the topic, because that's where we really get to hear your voice about how this particular thing that happened in history relates to the theme. And like Phineas said, it is so important to have people review your work. I had teachers, I had family members, I had friends that were also doing History Day that I had look over my projects with my various partners, because it was so helpful to get another perspective, because I might have 600 words and I'm so invested in the topic that it's really hard for me to cut something, and they're not as invested. And so they're a really great resource, because those people that don't know the topic as well can sort of pick out what are the not as relevant or unnecessary details that I was including that they realized they didn't really need but still got the point across. And so it is important to to very closely read the rules, because it can be kind of confusing, and that's where emailing Vania can be a great resource as well to figure out, okay, here's a photo of what I have. Does this fit or doesn't fit? And so, yeah, I think getting lots of feedback is really important, and also being very deliberate in trying to allocate as much as of those 500 words towards your own analysis.
We're also going to talk about media devices, because this has become more and more popular with the exhibit category. Media devices have a time limit of 3 minutes. Any student-composed questions, narration, or graphics are subject to the 500-word limit. So for example, if you recorded an interview and you're also recording your questions to the interviewee, that would be subject to the 500-word limit. Judges must be able to control the device, so that means if a judge approaches, they must be able to pause it or turn it off, and they must fit within the size limits of the exhibit. So I've seen a lot of iPads, a lot of laptops, a lot of projection, but just make sure that it fits within that size limit, those rules with your exhibit. Any media device used should be integral to the exhibit, not a method to bypass your involvement. So we want to make sure that we're actually building an exhibit in the exhibit category, and that you don't just have a screen presenting your information. Andrew, do you have any advice or suggestions, or maybe you've seen a couple media devices in the past that you would suggest students to use or not to use?
Yeah, I think that you do have to be careful, because you want the things to be secure in the exhibit, and it's always possible that those things can be taken. So you want things that are more compact and easier to secure. So I think that small DVD players are really great. I've seen people use iPads. Laptops can be kind of clunky and a little bit hard to incorporate, but I think that whatever you have available to you, like we said, with a big thing with exhibits is what resources do you have. When I did the category, I had a small DVD player that worked pretty well. I think that the big thing with the media devices is you don't want to, just because, for example, there's a documentary that exists on your topic, that doesn't mean that you should just automatically have a clip from that documentary. Like Vania just said, it's important that the media devices you use are incredibly motivated, and the keyword, they're integral to your topic. So I've seen a lot of students, and I think this works really well, they interview someone that's really important for their topic. If that's a secondary interview with a professor, or potentially the person that they're working on, or some person that was there while the event was occurring, having clips of interviews is really great, because then it gives us an opportunity to make the exhibit interactive. And that's the cool part about exhibits, is that the judge has the opportunity to press play, press pause, really sort of get their hands dirty with the topic itself. And so media devices are really useful when you want to either help contextualize an event, right? A documentary could be, having a clip from a documentary could be helpful if the background about a particular topic is really complex, and a documentary does a good job distilling sort of the complexity of a particular event or the context of a topic. Or, like I said, having clips of interviews, or there's a whole host of opportunities to use the media device, but as long as it's motivated, it can really add a really cool dimension to the exhibit. But I do encourage students to stay away from just simply having it there for the sake of having it there, because the idea that you need some sort of flashy thing to help you do better is completely a misnomer, because there are plenty and so many projects that have no media involved and do just fine. So it's really about the motivation behind using the device that will best help bring your topic alive for the judges.
Wonderful, thank you. So now we're going to talk about crediting sources. So all quotes from written sources must be credited on the exhibit. All visual sources, so for example, photographs, paintings, charts, and graphs that you share on your exhibit, those must be credited underneath the visual and fully cited in the annotated bibliography. So you don't have to write an annotation with your citation on the board, we just want that credit. Andrew, do you have any examples, or maybe just to reiterate that you had someone review these credits, or any suggestions that would help students?
Yeah, I think that it's always important that you have some type of credit and caption with a photo, because what I see a lot of times with students is they'll have a photo with a credit, but there's no caption associated with the photo. And that's difficult, because as a judge, I don't have an opportunity to really understand maybe what's happening in the photo if it's not explicitly clear. So I do encourage students always to try and find captions or small blurbs that can best explain what's happening in a photo, just to provide the necessary context so I know and have a better idea of why you have the photo on the exhibit. And it is very important that you credit the sources, like Vania says, because as historians, we have to give credit to the research that we're using, and it's plagiarism if you don't. So that's all the motivation that hopefully you would need. And crediting all of the photos and all of the quotes, also outside of just protecting you from plagiarism, also help give us context as to who's talking about the quote or why it's important and relevant to your topic. And so crediting sources are a really great way, and people don't realize this, to help support your claim. So who is giving a quote can have a big impact on the course of, or the significance of the topic that you're using specifically. And it is also very important that you have people vetting your exhibit so that they can see, does every caption, does every photo, every quote have a credit with it, so that we know exactly where it came from.
And just to reiterate, with the 500 word limit, the citation is not in the 500 word limit, but your caption would be, because it's student composed words. Required written material, we just want to touch base on the process paper and the annotated bibliography. So you will need 3 copies of each. The process paper it describes how you chose your topic, how you conducted your research, why you selected the exhibit category as your project, and how your project relates to the National History Day theme. And the annotated bibliography is a list of resources that contributed to your research, and it needs to be organized in primary and secondary sources. It includes sources of visual, audio material, or oral interviews that you conducted, bundled photos or other materials from the same collection in a single citation. So if you're using multiple photos from one collection, make sure you cite that as one. And annotations must explain how it's used so how you use the source for your research and through your project. Andrew, do you have any suggestions on maybe how to organize these 2 pieces, or how it helped you build your project in the past?
Certainly. The process paper and annotated bibliography are an incredibly important part of the History Day experience, in part because such a huge part of what you're judged on, and the biggest benefit of doing History Day, is the way that you learn to research and to research effectively. So I would suggest that people spend the adequate amount of time necessary to not only write a really thoughtful process paper, but also make sure that you're annotating your sources effectively. So with the process paper, the way that this is organized, the 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, I suggest students stay within that framework, because that's sort of what judges expect, and there's really no necessary need to deviate from that. So being thoughtful about explaining, how you came to your topic, not saying necessarily that you just Googled it and found it, but what brought you to a topic. Is there some unique connection that you have, or helping us sort of contextualize how you as a particular student of History Day came to it. How you conducted your research. This is where you're going to talk about what research experiences maybe you had if you went to a library or an archive, and then how you selected the category itself. This is where you're going to talk about why exhibits, that question that we sort of started with. Why was the exhibit the most beneficial? Justify for the judge, so we have a clear idea of kind of where you as a student are coming from. And then, of course, the last paragraph is really important, because it gives you an opportunity to another space to articulate the theme connection, which is about 20% of the judging criteria. So that's something you don't want to throw away. And then with the annotated bibliography, it's important that you're not just narrativizing the source itself. The point of to annotate the bibliography specifically is that in that paragraph description, you articulate why the source was important and how it impacted your project itself. So there are going to be sources that you read that you don't include in your bibliography because they didn't necessarily have an impact on your project itself. So it's important that in that paragraph you explain, this professor provided great insight regarding the significance of Susan B. Anthony, and that helped me and my partner contextualize her fight in the suffrage movement. So that gives me, that doesn't just tell me what they said, but the impact that it had on the project itself. And so it's important to be very thoughtful with the bibliography because 60% or 40%, some large number of the judging process is based off of your research. And the bibliography is something that judges take really seriously because that's sort of how you prove that you did the work. And so I encourage students to take the time to be thoughtful because they're such a great asset to showcasing the work that you did and showing off all of the amazing research that you've done.
Wonderful, thank you. And finally, if you're looking for additional assistance with the exhibit category or research itself, we do have a couple opportunities you can invest in. So history labs are open research days across the state through October through January. So we partner with libraries across the state, special collections, and other historians to help with research. If you're interested in attending a history lab, please check out the National History Day calendar on our website and you can register for one. We do have 2 workshop opportunities this fall. There's a workshop in Des Moines, November 17th, Saturday, November 17th, and one in Iowa City on Saturday, December 8th. So please take advantage of these workshops. We will have History Day mentors at these workshops to help with research or building your category or your project. And finally, we do have a program called National History Day in Iowa Mentor. So you can actually register to work with a mentor on your research, whether you need some advice with your thesis statement or need someone to help check out your exhibit labels. I would highly advise that you sign up to work with a mentor. And these are all free opportunities for you. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out, or you can check out the National History Day in Iowa Workshop and Assistance page, and that's that link there. But if you have any additional questions for me, whether it's on the category or building your project or research, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help you. Andrew, do you have any final advice or tips you'd like to share about the exhibit category?
I think that the exhibit category is one of the best categories of History Day, and I had so much fun working on my own projects, and I love working with students as well. And I think that the biggest thing with exhibits that I would suggest is make sure that your topic can really be brought alive by the exhibit category, because exhibit, what the great thing about it is the judge or the person looking at your exhibit gets the opportunity to really dig into your topic that you're presenting. I also think that I highly encourage people to go to the workshops, to work with mentors, to ask questions, because there's so many great resources that can really help make History Day much less daunting, because it is a lot of work, but it pays off in full 100%.
All right, thank you so much, Andrew, and we wish everyone good luck this contest season, and please let us know how we can help. Thanks, everyone.